Good evening, Senators. My name is Brent Mallinckrodt. I'm a professor at UT in the psychology department, the counseling psychology program there. I want to emphasize in my remarks some of the unintended consequences of the bill. Those are some of the things that worry me. I know that the plaintiff in Michigan, I'm familiar with that case, and she's a very sympathetic plaintiff. I'm sure that she is to many of the students, but I'm worried that this will open up a whole much wider range of plaintiffs who can bring lawsuits, and I want to give a couple of examples. One from my own experience at another university. When I was a professor at Missouri, we had a student who was seeing a female client who wanted to get out of a violent marriage. And that student said, was very unhelpful to that client in the circumstance because his religious belief told him that she ought to try harder to be reconciled to her husband. So we had to remove him from working with that client because we felt was harmful to her. We have a lot of military veterans that come to UT with their GI benefits. And in fact, we have a special training track in my program that trains our doctoral students. Some of them are ex-military themselves to work with those veterans. So under this bill, wouldn't a Quaker student be able to refuse to work with any of those veteran clients that we're trying to draw in and help? I grew up on a farm in Missouri. I was a 4-H kid and raised cattle, and I wonder if I had gone to the University of Missouri Counseling Center, had a law like this in Missouri, would a Hindu graduate student refuse to work with me because I have raised cattle for slaughter, or refuse to work with my daughter who wants to go into animal husbandry? I mean, these are not cases that maybe you're thinking of immediately, but I don't see how the bill can favor a student like Miss Ward in Michigan without letting in cases like I've just talked about. We have lots of students whose religious tradition tells them that drinking is not acceptable, and so would we allow a student in my program to say, I can't work with any client who drinks alcohol, or I can't work with any Jewish client? I know that the language of the bill says sincerely held religious belief. I grew up in a home in Missouri where we had 30 firearms, big hunting family. For my family, the seasons weren't winter, spring, fall, and summer, but duck, pheasant, deer, and turkey. And we have students in our program who are adamantly opposed to gun ownership. Now, what if a student like that comes to me and says, that's a sincere religious belief of mine. Please, I don't want a bill like this to put me in the judgment seat of deciding what's a religious belief and what's sincere. It seems to me that the code of ethics that we follow, which tells us that all students have to accommodate themselves, eventually to work with clients, no matter what the client believes or what that client's culture is, that's our safety valve here. It's not easy for students, but we try to train them as best we can to try to help all the clients that come to them. And to me, I don't think that's very different than other professions. I understand that lawyers, like if you're the public defender, you have to take clients that come to you even though you disagree with them, and in fact, you have to give them a vigorous defense, as I understand it. So our profession isn't a lot different than those other professions. Our students have freedom of speech and freedom of religion in the classroom and on campus, but not in the treatment room where they're providing a professional service to clients. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senator Kelsey had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess it's just more of a comment, but it seems to me that refusing to work with someone for engaging in certain conduct is a totally separate issue from refusing to advise someone to engage in that particular conduct. And don't you see the distinction between the two?
Senator, I think that's a great question, but the problem that we run into is we don't really know what the clients are going to tell us when they first come in. Some of these issues really don't emerge until 3-4 sessions have gone by. And then especially in counseling, when you refer a client after the working relationship has started, it could be argued that the client is harmed by the referral. And so I think there's also a suit that could be made then on the client on the basis of, well, you've harmed me by letting this counseling go this far, and then refer them to someone else.
Senator Canfield.
Isn't it clear to say that psychology is not really an exact science and there's not one way to counsel all people? Would you say that's fair?
I would certainly say that. I would agree.
So if someone were to say, come in and, I'm just going to throw an example out there, say they were a homosexual, and a person truly did not believe that was a natural act, and they suggested, say, change therapy, would that be an acceptable something that you could allow a student to do in your schools?
You know, I think
as a student, would you say, if a student said, okay, I'm going to counsel that person as I've been taught to, but I believe change therapy is what is right, and therefore I'm going to counsel them with that. Is that acceptable to you?
it wouldn't be acceptable, but not for the reasons maybe that you're thinking, Senator Canfield. We don't want our students to be suggesting a course of action. I think that's a misreading of what counseling is. We try to help them discover with that client what's best. Back to the example in Missouri, the woman who, should she stay with her husband or should she leave? We wanted that decision to be up to her and for her counselor to help her fully explore those options. And so I would object to a student who says, I have a plan for my client and I want that client to follow this certain plan, whatever that certain plan is.
But aren't you doing that by saying, well, maybe they are dealing with someone who maybe they disagree with philosophically or whatever, disagree with the plan of action to take to help the patient the most? I mean, what the patient may want may not necessarily be what the therapist believes. I mean, someone who's on drugs may say, how can I get more drugs? That doesn't necessarily mean that's the best course of action, and that's what a counselor should tell them.
That's right. Because we certainly wouldn't advocate illegal behavior, but we want to give the clients a wide scope to be able to make the decisions that are best for them, and we want our counselors to assist them in making those decisions.
Senator
Well,
Canfield, this gentleman is about to exceed his 5 minutes, so
It's fine.
if you could hold your questions.
It's fine. Thank you.
Okay. And did we have two more people who were